Suffering. Isn't it nice when, this is kind of rude, in fact it probably borders on sarcasm. Isn't it kind of nice when they sit in their ivory tower and they go, suffering's just a part of life. It makes you a better person. Right?
I was thinking of course we all do this where we have an opinion before we even go through things, but I feel like maybe in this case you have to do some sort of suffrage to even know what to say, because if you've never really suffered in your life and then been like, oh yeah, you can get through it fine,
Though I have to say, I agree with you. I have to say, I read an interesting essay just before I came in. Someone was talking about Maggie, and paraplegic, and no one bothered to offer hope what she could do. And they said, for example, Stephen Hawking's, the most renowned physicist we have right now. Well, not now, he passed away finally, and he was, he couldn't even talk, he had a machine that would talk for him. Well, okay, fine, but Stephen found a way to live with it, and that doesn't mean everybody should be made to find a way to live with it. It goes back to suffering. Therefore, he says, euthanasia is not an easy death. And by the way, one of the classes I didn't point this out, the definition of euthanasia, it's a Greek word, is a good death or happy death. I shared that in class. Good death or happy death, okay. Euthanasia is not an easy death. He says it's a wrongful death. Therefore, euthanasia is not just dying, it's killing. Well, you can make a reasonable argument out of the argument from nature, self-interest, and practical effects. Of course, he leaves things out that Rachel's will include. So he's presenting a reasonable argument. Okay. Do any of you find any agreement with this at all? I do. It's reasonable. I'm not swayed by it, but it's very reasonable.
The whole suicide thing is really sketchy at the front end.
Well, yeah, you leave that out, though. Just go with his justifications against it from nature, self-interest, and practical effects.
I think what really, I'm not saying I'm certainly swayed by it, but where you're talking about the slippery slope and euthanizing people who may not have the mental capacity to make that decision, which then leads to harvesting their organs because greater good. So I think that's really the biggest part of the argument for me personally. Okay, now I understand why you're making this argument.
Yeah, and we haven't gotten into designer babies yet and embryonic stem cell research, and when we get to that point and we end up having children that maybe aren't the best or what we hope for, well, we'll try again. You can just, I hate to put it this way, but you can just put that one aside and we'll try it again until we get it right this time and you get what you're paying for. And that's out there on the horizon, people. It's not that far away. We don't want to think of it, so we put it in the back of our minds. But that then becomes social policy that piggybacks on voluntary or non-voluntary or involuntary active euthanasia. How far down the slope do we go? Right now we're just talking about voluntary active, where you volunteer. But that's not necessarily the end of the journey, Ramon.
Hollywood touched on that for a moment with a movie called Revo Man, where they were harvesting organs from people that couldn't make payments on.
Sure.
So, yeah.
Well, and my sister's, this young girl that was given, she was birthed genetically, and they harvested her organs for her sister, and her sister freaked out finally when she realized it and said she should be able to live her own life too. My sister's keeper, or my sister's, something like that. So, okay. Well, here's Rachel's, and this is justifying euthanasia. He says, active euthanasia occurs when someone, typically a medical professional, takes an action to deliberately end a patient's life at the patient's request for the patient's good. Considerations of mercy play a vital role. So he at least is getting the definition right. Rachel's claims that any action that promotes the best interest of all concerned and that violates no one's rights is morally acceptable. This is a libertarian argument. People have rights to do what they want to do as long as what they do don't violate anyone else. Since active euthanasia sometimes satisfies this description, it is sometimes morally acceptable. If you hinge your argument on what he says, he's right. As long as no one is offended by it or no one feels hurt by it, then what's the harm in it? Okay, now what's wrong with this argument? People are offended by it, that's part of it, absolutely. And what else then? Who's requesting euthanasia?
The person.
Say again?
The patient.
The patient. And now suddenly we're adding people who aren't asking to be euthanized and may well have a stake against it. I know people who literally, in the medical field, who literally are at end of life and they want a palliative care, they want to add pain relief, and the family doesn't want the patient to have it because they want him to be conscious to the end. So the patient is suffering, sometimes excruciating pain, but the family wants them to be what we call cognizant or cogent. They want them to be rational, even though they're out of it, so that they can, if there's a chance to communicate with them before death. Well, there's nothing wrong with wanting to do that, as long as you don't mind that the consequence to the patient might be increased or continued suffering. So Rachel's takes an argument from what we're going to call in a few minutes autonomy. The patient has a right to request for their own benefit, but now it's going to be compromised potentially by adding other people to the equation. Because oftentimes families aren't ready to let go. Do any of you deal with end-of-life situations? I know I've been involved in it. I've had to talk to families. Again, if I repeat myself, you have to say deja vu. And we've had to go in and tell them, look, I mean, everybody understands where you're at. If you can accept their death, you need to tell them it's okay to go. Because the only reason they haven't gone is they're hanging out for you. And people kind of look at you. But I've seen families literally go in, if they make peace with it, and they say, Grandma, Grandpa, Mom and Dad, whatever, it's okay if you want to go. And within hours, they slip away peacefully. Say again?
Every time somebody says something like that, it's like sad to hear.
Well, it is real sad, but you know, it's the inevitable anyway, and you're giving them the peace that they want, the sufferer. Yeah, the family has to deal with it. Of course you do. You never get away from it.
I think personally, when we're talking about something like this, I look at it from the perspective of family members being uneducated. My grandfather passed away about 2 years ago. However, a year prior to that, as far as we were concerned, and my parents were in the medical field, he had a pretty close brush, we would say, and had that conversation of finally talking, pulling my grandmother in the room and going, look, this is it. But after the fact, I mean, my grandmother knows nothing as far as the medical field. And here she is trying to get as much information as she can and not really understanding what's going on. So she's against him. Let me step back. His idea was, I don't want the medical treatment. Here I am at the edge of, I'm ready to go. And she's going, wait a minute, why are you being stupid? So because of the fact that she wasn't being educated properly or didn't understand it,
Or didn't want to let go. There are people who don't want to let go. They're not ready. Jada.
This is like a lifespan argument, but people who are dying, it's called death phases. There's certain phases that you go through, and the people who are sick or dying, they're going to be at a different phase than the one who's not suffering. So it's a matter of, okay, I've accepted this part of my life. They've gone through the steps to do it. Everyone does it. It's a natural, it's what we do.
what is that, the 7 stages of death?
It's 5 stages of death by Kubler-Ross, yeah. And it's, yeah, absolutely right. And people who are facing death, they figure it out before anybody else does.
Oh, yeah.
And they accept it. They go through their own stages. I had a friend of mine, she had lymphoma cancer, went into remission, came back, went to visit Dorothy one day, and she's in her bed, and she's just sure people have strapped her legs down. She can't move. I knew her well enough. I took the covers, from the feet and pulled them up and said, Dorothy, no one's, and she got so mad at me, she says, get them. And I was blown away by it. I mean, I've been educated to know it's going to still blew me away. A couple of days later, I came back and she's in tears, forgive me, And I thought, hey, you're going through what we call end-of-life stages of grief. She's trying to deal with it. Dorothy accepted it before anybody else could. And that's usually what happens with families. So I think that's what Jada's referring to. So he's going to support euthanasia, and then he adds people into the equation, and people are unpredictable. We went through this when we talked about the utilitarian argument. What's the calculus for happiness? Well, euthanasia is a good or happy death for the person who is suffering, ready to die, gone through the stages, accepting it. The family hasn't gone through it, or just not ready or unwilling to accept it. And so now we have what we call a confluence of forces, and we're going to have a clash. Okay? His argument would have been stronger if he left it out and said it's really up to the individual. but we don't live in that world. So we have to deal with it. So this is argument. The single most powerful argument in support of euthanasia is the argument for mercy. Terminally ill patients sometimes suffer pain so horrible that it's beyond the comprehension of those who have not actually experienced it. The argument for mercy says euthanasia is justified because it provides an end to that. So he tells a story about Jack. And Jack is suffering. He's on the third night of this routine, intravenous shots of synthetic opiate, a painkiller analgesic for 4 hours. The terrible thought occurred to me, if Jack were a dog, what would we do with him? Well, the answer is obvious, the pound and chloroform. No human being with a spark of pity could let a living thing suffer and call that good. Well, he's drawn an analogy here like we had with Judith Thompson. Where's the analogy breakdown? Jack's not a dog. He's a human being, and we value people differently than we do other living things. Now, do animals have souls? I don't know, but we have that discussion that we have souls. Whether we do or not, or whether we know or not, but we see ourselves as a value in life that has a higher rating than other living things do. So when we try and draw an equivalency, that puts your argument in jeopardy. Jack's suffering was not the result of poor treatment in some backward rural facility. It was the inevitable product of his disease, which medical science was powerless to prevent. With this in mind, we can appreciate the full force of the argument for mercy. If a person prefers or even begs for death as the only alternative to lingering on in this kind of torment, only to die anyway, then surely it's not immoral to help this person die sooner. So the strength of the argument for mercy is you're dying anyway, we can't stop it. Why should we refrain the final act so you can suffer for a longer period of time? We want to be merciful and we want to let you go. That's the strength of the argument. You can argue against it. You have the sanctity of life argument. You can make a reasonable argument against it as well. But that's the force of the argument. There's suffering. It's the end of life. There's nothing we can do. Why prolong your suffering? Why go to what J. Gay Williams says, well, suffering's just a part of life. Yeah, sure it is. There's not one of us in the room that hasn't gone through suffering, and some of us extreme suffering.
I like agreeing with Rachel only because I feel like a lot of, like, not to be, I don't know much about it anyway, but I'm saying, like, not anyone who suffers immediately goes to the option of dying or
Correct.
the option of suicide, like, sorry to say, but, like, there are many steps and signs that you see before they even take that route usually. A lot, we fight, that's nature, so.
Sure.
We have to adapt.
And what's your first name again?
Virginia.
Virginia.
You can call me Virginia.
Jenny. The strength of her argument is then that we need to have safeguards too.
Yeah.
Because not everybody who goes through extreme suffering is really going to end up wanting to die.
Right.
Does that make sense? I mean, I suffered when I went through cancer treatment, people. There was no way in hell I was going to die. I mean, if I was, they were going to take me kicking and dragging to the morgue. I was not going to die. You have no idea the pain I went through, but there was just no way I was going to die.
Hope played into that at all?
Well, hope did, yeah. I mean, a lot of things played into it. I had babies, people. I wasn't going to be without
How
my
old were
baby.
you when that happened?
Old enough to know I had babies and I wasn't going to leave the planet if I didn't have to.
So I think a lot of people in your situation, they fail to put in sheer willpower.
I don't know what it was.
That's what I would call it.
I don't know what it was. I know when I was staying at the house,